I'll never forget that chilling night when I encountered the terror that lurks in the dark. It was a cold, moonless evening that kind of sends shivers down your spine before anything even happened. I was driving down a desolate road, surrounded by dense woods, and now I was heading home after a long day of work. As I rounded a bend, my headlights caught something strange in the distance. At first, I thought it was just a trick of light, a shadow perhaps, but as I drew nearer, a sense of dread crept over me. There, perched on a rusted old fence post, was a figure unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Its eyes glowed with an eerie red hue, piercing through the dark like hot coals. Its wings, stretched out wide, seemed to absorb what little light there was, casting a shadowy silhouette. I couldn't look away, and I was paralyzed by fear and curiosity, but for some reason, the curious side of me more so. It wasn't just its appearance that unnerved me. It was the feeling of being watched, of something preying upon me, and this wasn't something that was just normal. It seemed ancient, malevolent even. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to flee, to escape the clutches of whatever this sinister force was that lurked in the woods. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, desperate to capture evidence of this unearthly encounter. But as I raised it to take a photo, the creature let out a bone-chilling screech. A sound that seemed to reverberate through my very soul. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, the tires screeching against the pavement as I tore down the road. Finally, I left the creature that I saw behind in the dark. But try as I might, I couldn't shake the feeling that those glowing eyes were still watching me, following me wherever I went. That night, as you can imagine, I barely slept, haunted by nightmares of those piercing red eyes and the unearthly screech that echoed in my ears. And even now, as I recount this tale, I can't shake the feeling that the Mothman is still out there, waiting, watching, and biding its time until it's able to strike at me again. It was a humid summer evening in the small town of Flatwoods, West Virginia, where I spent my entire childhood. The air was thick with the scent of pine and the distant hum of insects. Little did I know that this night would forever be etched into my memory as the night I came face to face with a real legend. A group of us, curious teenagers, had heard whispers of strange sightings in the nearby woods. Ignoring the warnings of our parents, we ventured into the dark, armed only with flashlights and a sense of bravery. As we trudged deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in on us. It was almost as if the light was just canvassed by the dark sky. The air grew colder, and a sense of uneasiness settled over our group like a suffocating blanket. Suddenly, we stumbled upon a clearing, and there, illuminated in the pale moonlight, stood a figure so grotesque and otherworldly that you wouldn't believe me no matter what I told you. Its elongated frame towered over us, its eyes burning with an otherworldly glow, and its skin seemed to crack with electric energy, or some sort of jolt or beam. I can't quite explain exactly how it looked, but it seemed like lightning. We froze in terror, unable to comprehend the horror that was right in front of our eyes. But before we could react, the creature let out a deafening scream. It looked right at us, knowing that we had entered its territory, and it didn't seem to take to us too fondly. This scream sounded exactly like something you would hear from a banshee on a show. It was such an ear-piercing scream that to this day I feel like it managed to hurt my eardrums. Panic set in, and of course we decided to flee in every direction possible. We were desperate to escape the clutches of this monstrous being. I stumbled through the underbrush, my heart pounding in my chest, and my breath coming out in the cold light. But no matter how far I ran, and no matter how fast I ran, I felt like it was following me wherever I went. I finally managed to emerge from the woods, and I collapsed on the ground immediately, looking for my friends. I was so exhausted and struck with fear that I kinda decided that I should get up and leave no matter what. My friends were nowhere to be seen, in which I did meet up with them later that night again, as it seemed everyone thought the best idea was to head home. But from that night on, I couldn't sleep without the lights on, and I was haunted by the nightmares of this flatwood monster. Even now, years later, I can't shake the feeling that it's still out there, waiting for someone to come upon it. I never believed in monsters, and until this day, I don't think I would still believe in monsters if I didn't see what I did. Not until that fateful camping trip deep in the heart of the Pacific Northwest. It was supposed to be a weekend of bonding with my friends, a chance to escape the stresses of city life and finally reconnect with nature. But what we found in those remote woods was beyond anything we could have imagined, and definitely not the nature we were looking for. As we set up camp, the air was thick with anticipation and excitement. The sun dipped below the horizon, and the sky was painted with fiery hues of orange and red. Little did we know, we weren't alone in those ancient woods that night. In the dead of night, we heard what sounded like branches starting to snap, and they were getting closer to us. At first, we laughed it off as probably some sort of fox or maybe larger animal, but as the sound grew closer, our laughter turned to fear. Then, what we saw next was the scariest thing I've ever seen in my entire life to this day. A towering figure, hulking and hairy, emerged from the shadows, and it just stood there, staring at us. It moved with a grace, and was actually stealthy despite its massive size, and for some reason, it blended into the forest like nothing. We huddled together, with our hearts pounding of course, and this creature started to approach our camp with a curious gaze. Its presence filled us with dread, a gut-wrenching fear that threatened to consume us whole. But it wasn't until it started to charge that we decided to run. Realizing the true extent of the danger we were in, with a surge of adrenaline, we scrambled to our feet, grabbing whatever makeshift weapons we could find, and we prepared to defend ourselves against this intruder. As the creature advanced, it seemed like it noticed what we were holding, and in that moment, it decided to back away and run into the woods like a human being. The way its hands swung at its side almost reminded me of exactly how a normal person would run. After it ventured back into the woods, it was immediately time to start packing everything up and heading back home, as I don't think anyone wanted to stay there after that encounter. I've always heard stories of the Bigfoot and the forest that we were surrounded by, but I never thought I'd encounter something that would fit the exact description of that. Trust me when I say, this was no forest animal, and if it was, I wouldn't be telling you otherwise. This was something different, something that not even me who watches Nat Geo all the time could even recognize.